you guys spent a lot of time, or a good, at least, you know, you got to peek under the hood and interview Andrew Tate in person. You saw this war room, and Matt was just alluding to this like recruitment effort. Just take us now inside of Tate's facilities and like what you saw and experienced as journalists firsthand when you went there. Either of you.
We first began by investigating his online kind of courses. The Hustlers University was one of them. It's now called The Real World, where you would kind of pay Andrew Tate to become an alpha male, supposedly like him. And that's probably one of his main ways of getting wealthy, right? Because these courses cost a monthly subscription. And once you're in there, you're becoming further radicalized. And essentially you're on the bottom rung of a pyramid. The next level up is the War Room, his elite society of real alpha males, which costs several $1,000s to join. And
this is a pyramid scheme.
It is a pyramid scheme, but it's
okay.
It's a little bit more insidious than that. So it essentially, the War Room claims to be like an elite network of men. They had an event in Romania where it was called The Test, and you essentially paid thousands and thousands of dollars to go to Romania and to be tested by Andrew Tate and his team in a way that you didn't know what it was. And we were invited to do this. And on the first day in kind of the mountains in Romania at this hotel, there's about 300 men. I forget now how many.
It was about 150 men in total, I think.
150 men who had all paid to be there. And Tate comes out and he says, in 3 days' time, you know, you've each been paired with a professional MMA fighter, and you will be given the opportunity to fight this person in a ring on live Romanian television. It's a real fight. You could die. You know, none of you are getting any training or anything like that. You can say no, or you can say yes. And if you say yes, you know, this is a real fight. You could get seriously injured. And if you say no, well, we don't really talk about that for now. We later found out that if you said no, you were kind of forced to like sit facing a wall and journal about how shameful you were as a man. I said yes because I wanted to like see how far.
I mean, you don't want to be a cuck, right?
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to be a cuck. But that is kind of it. Like, I mean, he created this like pressure cooker of male insecurity that, like, you know, I like completely fell for. I was like, I'm not gonna like not rise to this challenge. I want to prove that like lib cucks can be masculine too. But yeah, it did end up with me, you know, getting the crap kicked out of me in a cage fight in Romania, but then gaining their respect, and then interviewing Andrew Tate one final time where we put to him serious allegations of human trafficking.
Are you okay? Like, I mean,
yeah, I think I was fine. It wasn't that bad because I mean, like,
you had a bruised rib.
I had a bruised rib. I mean, like, I sort of like, I don't have any fighting experience, but I kind of managed to last quite a bit longer than other people because I asked someone who knew how to box, like, what for advice, and he said, you want to kind of, you're not going to win, so just kind of do ring craft, which basically means kind of like moving left and right and running around. But I just sort of like ran around in a circle, like away from this guy as he tried to hit me, and then kind of ended the fight on the ground by basically kind of grappling him, but, you know, really just kind of, I say grapple, kind of just like hugging him, almost requesting him to like stop the fight. And so then that happened. And yeah, it was like, you know, I had passed the test by getting into the ring.
I think the whole experience was very surreal because you had all of these like very cult-like soldiers coming to partake in the test, and they were being managed by Andrew Tate, his brother Tristan, but also just like the strangest array of men who called themselves generals. So there was one who went by the name Alpha Wolf. His real name was Kevin. There was another guy called Sartorial Shooter. Real name was Jewel. There was like an endless list of these like comic book characters. And that was one thing we always sort of grappled with. It's like Tate's fans are so obsessed with him and they see him as like this real successful man, but then he's like essentially surrounded by the cringiest losers you've ever seen, like grown men calling themselves Alpha Wolf, or this figure Iggy Semmelweis, who's like in his 60s, American guy from Chicago who's grown a huge long beard and is LARPing as a wizard. In our investigation, we essentially found out that he kind of created this character to be the spiritual leader of the war room that was based on an evil wizard from the Conan the Barbarian novels who traded in trafficked women and flared their skin to make books. But that was an aspect of the story that we had no idea we would uncover, right? When we first started with like, who's this growing obnoxious influencer who says like extremely problematic things about women? And we ended up confronting Iggy at his home in Koreatown, Hollywood, where he lives. And we had this very surreal experience where we sort of followed him through Hollywood for 20 minutes, looking like TMZ reporters, except we were asking him very serious questions because, as Matt spoke to, the war room isn't just a cult where Andrew Tate exploits men to get money out of them, right? Because that's essentially what he's doing. They're all paying him thousands of dollars a year. But he also teaches those same men how to exploit women to make money for themselves. And Iggy Semmelweis, or Miles Sonkin in particular, we uncovered, 2 years worth of messages from their private chat rooms. And he was guiding men around the world on how to essentially traffic women. He was saying, we want to try and isolate them from their families, isolate them from their friends, create false arguments, and then to get them to apologize, they have to tattoo your name on them. Oh, they don't want to do it. Here's pictures of other men with their women's name, other women with their boyfriends' names tattooed on them. Show them to the woman to guilt them into doing it. All of these sort of very classic trafficking techniques that you've seen, used across parts of the world and also in pimping culture. These were being taught directly in this war room. And that was kind of the culmination of our investigation. And we ended up speaking to women in the US who had been groomed by senior members of Andrew Tate's war room into working in webcam. We interviewed women in South America, in Europe. And it really, as we kind of uncovered, is one of the, or at least at the time, was one of the largest grooming networks in the world.
If you could just expand on that, it would be, I think, helpful for people, perhaps if they know somebody that's experienced this.
Of course, yes. So what it appeared that they were using in these messages and in everything we uncovered, the women we spoke to, and also what Andrew and Tristan Tate are accused of doing in Romania, is using what's known as the lover boy method. And Matt actually asked Tate about the lover boy method the first time we interviewed him properly. Matt said, have you ever heard of the lover? Have you heard of the term lover boy? Sorry. And Andrew Tate immediately went, the lover boy method? Yeah, what about it? So he immediately kind of knew what it was, this sort of academic term that's used in human trafficking and pimping. And what these men do is they basically aim to seek out women who they see as particularly vulnerable. It's typically young, small social circle, and working a low-income job. So we saw messages where they suggested looking for people that worked in Starbucks or McDonald's, young women kind of in those in-between life jobs. And these men teach each other how to build Instagram profiles to make themselves appear to be more impressive. And we saw courses, manuals that they actually send to each other. And it's like, rent a black BMW for the day, buy a plain white shirt, park it up here, take some pictures. And they'll build these Instagram accounts that make them seem very wealthy and, successful men. And they will approach these women appearing to just want a date, want a relationship. And what those women don't know is that those same men have an ulterior long-term motive, which is essentially get them into a position where they will work for them on webcam and give them, all of the money ideally, but failing that 80% of the earnings was typically what we saw. And it's through a gradual process, which they themselves refer to as kind of Pavlovian conditioning, how you would train a dog. So you reward when they show behavior you want to see, and you punish when there's behavior that you don't support. And it's some of those methods we spoke about, Iggy talking about again, trying to get them to get their name tattooed on you, isolating them from friends and family, making them financially dependent. They really strongly advise that the women themselves never have any login details or know the name of the account because they don't want them having access to it. And it's a large issue. We're not talking small amounts of women we saw. It was large amounts of women spread across the world who'd seemingly been victim to this. And some of them still may not know. A lot of these women we spoke to, it wasn't until one of them uncovered one of Andrew Tate's courses that she realized, oh, exact lines that Andrew Tate has told people to use were used on me. In fact, there's one thing they teach men to do to try and find sort of more susceptible women. They say, you know, on the first date, request that the young women bring you a very particular box of chocolates, because most women would say, no, you're really weird, I'm not bringing you a box of chocolates. But the ones who say yes might be more susceptible to this sort of gradual process of manipulation. And in either kind of like a wild ego trip from Andrew Tate, or in a kind of wink wink joke to the men he teaches how to use these methods, when we tried to interview Tate after he was released from jail after 6 months he spent there after his first arrest, he insisted that Matt brought him a box of chocolates to grant an interview. So we had this kind of crazy back and forth with him where he insisted he needed them for energy to be able to conduct the interview, even though it was Ramadan and he was allegedly fasting as a now devout Muslim. But yeah, I think like it's an incredibly horrible and brutal method of grooming women, right? It preys on this really core, beautiful thing that all human beings have, which is like a desire to find someone that loves them and love them back. And they take that and they turn it into a way to exploit women for money. And that's where it's kind of the underlying thread through all of Andrew Tate's work, from my opinion. It's why we called our second documentary for the BBC, Andrew Tate, the Man Who Groomed the World, because that is truly what he's done. The young men who've fallen for him, they're sending him money. The young women who come into his circle, they end up having to give him money. It all ends with Andrew Tate getting your money. And that's kind of his end goal in life, from what I can see.
And in the end, the men that are participating in the exploitation, they are also searching for meaning. It's a perverted sense of meaning. But, you know, I think that when you can have control over over a woman in your life, or maybe many women, because this is almost like a step up from, I want to be able to abuse my wife and control who she sees and who she doesn't. This is about almost like creating a harem, or a group of women that are like, I saw a review in Dissect magazine of your guys' work that was really well thought out, and they talked about how it's like the gig worker of female exploitation, and that's the model, I guess. So just to kind of close here, Matt, if you could just talk about how it is just this cycle of alienation, and maybe the more specific flavor of exploitation of women that this, you know, it's more modernized, and what it represents.
Yeah, I mean, it's modernized in a number of ways. First of all, because the net that these men who seek to groom and manipulate women can cast is much wider, because they're doing it through social media, sending hundreds and hundreds of messages a day, doing things like, you know, search a random city, maybe in a poor country, search nightclubs in that city, see all the women who have been to that nightclub or liked it, and then message all of them in a day, kind of thing. And then you'll eventually find women who are susceptible for whatever reason to your grooming tactics, and employ the kind of training manual provided by the war room and how to groom and brainwash them into subservience. And yeah, this isn't just like the pickup artists of back in the day, or like, this is how you get laid. It's like, this is how you train, you find, groom, and manipulate women. Or maybe you already have a girlfriend. This is how you train her to be submissive. Or maybe it's your wife. Maybe it's how you train your wife to be submissive. This is how you dominate, you know, women, basically. And I think that really comes from a place of like deep insecurity about your own masculinity, a real like fear that if you're not dominating other women in this way, you know, if they're not fully subservient to you, then you're not really a real man. And you see Andrew Tate doing it online. He seems to have all these women at his beck and call. You see Fresh and Fit doing it. Why do I not have that as a man? Why am I, you know, and that leads to a really, essentially a very dangerous bastardization of the pickup artist game, if you will, which is turning it into a kind of a grooming tactic. I mean, Jamie and I have spoken to almost 100 Tate supporters in our time investigating him. Not a single one has ever come across as happy to us. I think, you know, a lot of them have been they feel as though they've lost their relationships with the women in their life. They've lacked a real meaningful relationship with the women, but also because this group and this kind of ideology and the online community behind it also drives you away from your friends, from your family, from other sources of authority, whether that's teachers, therapists, anything. They make you mistrust everyone. Other men in your life are competitors. If they don't agree with you, then ditch them. Don't have them in your life. So they're really lacking in meaningful social relationships. They're encouraged to get rich by trading crypto. Stay at home, stay at your computer, trade crypto, get rich. Okay, you're not good at fighting, you're weak. Learn like a fighting sport, a combat sport. Become more of a man that way. Become richer, and then eventually dominate women. And nowhere are they saying like go out and make some friends. Like go do I don't know, go
be a part of your community. Go to a book club. Do a trivia night. Join a union.
Play a team sport. Anything.
Go to the pub with your friends, or anything. Nothing that is beneficial really for men to hear is in this advice.
It's the cycle. It literally is. He's not trying to make them happier or even have a do what he says of like being super popular with women. It's about continuing to isolate them so they keep coming back for the fix and keep paying him money for the advice that's not helping them. But I really appreciate your guys' time today. It's a fascinating conversation, and you really did old school, like, investigative journalism here. I mean, Matt even got beat up for this. So everybody, for that reason, check out their book. It's called Clown World, 4 Years Inside Andrew Tate's Manosphere. We'll put a link to that below wherever people are listening to or watching this. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.